Hey Bowles, how we doing today? I see we have a pretty good starting audience so far. It's good to see. Well, today we're going to be continuing to work on some Malifaux stuff that we were doing last week. We made some really good progress on this guy. And I'm liking how he's turning out so far. Right at the moment, we're going to figure out how to do these wings, how we want them. I'm not going to try to make them stand out in any particular way. I just kind of want to make them look sort of natural, sort of organic to the rest of his body. Then we're going to work on the head, see how we want to do these horns and this hair. The leather straps actually should be pretty easy. I might just like apply the same technique I was using on my Death Guard for them. If you were there for that, and if you weren't, you'll see it this time. And really then it's just finishing the rest of his blue skin, which, you know, obviously the only thing we've done is really his face. So then the rest is still remains to be done. And then his sword, which actually I think will be pretty easy. Just do the leather on the handle the same way, do the metal. Kind of similar to the way his arm is, not exactly the same, but similar. So that it doesn't clash. So really not too much to go with him. And we've already got his base ready to go. We may add some grass tufts to it, but otherwise it is set to go for him as soon as he's ready. So I think it'll be a pretty interesting model once it's done, and there's going to be still more to go with him. So now we're going to go ahead and get these wings ready. We already use a fairly dark blue for the base color of the body, but here we're going to go ahead and apply Incubi Darkness. The Fang is what we use for the body, and Incubi Darkness is what we're going to use for the wings. Something that's still very much a blue, but also, you know, incorporates a little bit of an adjacent color. So it's still very different. Stands out, but at the same time doesn't look like it is an entirely separate object. It looks like it's part of the thing that is also blue. Now I don't know if this will work better or if I want something to really contrast with it. Well, that's what we're going to find out during the stream today. How well can we tie these things together, and will it still look good even if it doesn't stand out drastically? We already have a lot of high contrasting elements, so it's not necessarily bad to have an element that doesn't. Of course, the tricky part is the underside. We won't have to spend a whole lot of time actually highlighting or blending the underside because it won't have nearly the same amount of visibility as the top, but you can't completely ignore it. Gotta give it some attention. So those of you in the chat who want to share what you're doing today, if you're painting anything right now, let us know what you're up to, what project you're working on. And as always, if you have any questions about what I'm doing, what I'm working on, what game it goes to, what techniques I'm using, any question you can come up with related to this stream, totally up for grabs. Or fair game, should I say. Whoa. Right now we're more worried about getting the webbing and the wings the right color than we are worried about the the bone parts. And keeping the bone parts their base color, so it's not really a big deal. Because we already know how we're going to do the parts that match the body's color. I'm more worried about how this darker webbing is going to go. Doing algebra homework, and then Dark Imperium Death Guard. I like the sound of that. I actually am looking forward to doing the Dark Imperium Death Guard that I have as well. Trying to finish Lord Felthius and the Tainted Cohort first, but it's been slow going because I really only worked on it on stream because I have another project on the side I'm trying to finish for our Team Yankee Escalation League. And I'm also trying to get this Malifaux gang done because I want to start actually playing Malifaux again. It's been a really long time since I've been able to regularly play the game, and I'm really looking forward to getting this Nephilim gang done that I'm working on now, and putting them in action again, and starting to get back into the Malifaux scene. So my Death Guard are kind of sitting around, They'll probably get some love on stream pretty soon, but until then... Alright, while we're waiting for the wings to dry, we'll just... give some attention to some other elements. I don't know what is going on there. We'll have to clean that up. Doing algebra homework. Right now my wife is probably grading algebra homework. I think painting Death Guard is probably a lot more fun. Alright. So, yeah, let's fix that real quick. I don't like the look of that. Got a little place where something either bubbled up or something got stuck in the paint. We're just gonna carefully take it off. Something I don't recommend trying to do yourself unless you really have some experience dealing with that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you can really leave behind something that's even harder to get rid of. I'm not saying don't try it, but if you are, be careful. Yes, that's right, Neverborn. Working on a Nephilim gang with Lilith and Nekima, and a handful of various ages of Nephilim, and this is Barbaros, obviously, for those who are familiar with the set. And I may even add in, you know, a Lilu, a Lilitu or something, you know. Just all Nephilim-themed stuff for now. You know, I may expand on that later when I get back into the Malifaux scene. But for now, you know, just working on sort of a pure Nephilim list. Pure Nephilim gang. And for the moment, we're trying to figure out how we're going to do the wings. But while we're waiting for those to dry, I'm going to hit up these real quick. And then eventually blending this in a bit. So I guess I could probably encroach on where the blue should be for now. And always blend it back in later after I figure out how we want to paint these knees ultimately. I think he actually comes out of Lilith's box. Pretty sure he comes with her. Yeah, just out of Lilith's basic gang box. Alright, now we're going to start trying to add a few highlights to this. I'm going to make them a little more obvious to start out with. And then we're going to take a very thin, slightly lightened version of this. Just mixed in a little bit of Fenrisian gray into it. Remember, this is all experimental. I'm not sure if this is how I'm ultimately going to do everybody, all of the Nephilim, but we're going to try it out, see what we get. Use this over here. Whoop. Plus the adhesion of our temporary base here. I know it looks like I'm just erasing everything I just did, but what I'm trying to do is preserve the original color, but at the same time let there be the appearance of a gradient. See if it even works. As I said before, this is an experiment, so I'm not sure if this is going to give me the results I want or not. Don't mind the color transition, but it does need better coverage, so it can be a bit smoother. So we may have to go a little more slowly here, a little more methodically. Let's see if I can make things a little easier to see here. A lot of dark colors we're working with. I think we're getting there. We just need to get a little bit better coverage with our light color. Then glaze with the Incubi Darkness again. That seems to be tying things together pretty well. I think we may want to extend this light color a little bit further this way. Now you know why so many people use airbrushes, because this would be something you could do in a fraction of the time with an airbrush normally. And if I had a whole army of these I had to do, I would definitely be breaking out my airbrush to do this part. But there's only 5 or 6 of these guys that I've got to do. Actually, not even that many, because most of them have tiny wings. We're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 total. So that's not so bad. Alright, yeah, that's starting to work better. Let's do a little bit of that over here as well. And just get things started. Alright, let's give this light glaze of the base color. Kind of spread it away from the highlight, more towards the shade, but still keeping it there. And we'll start working on blending this one in properly. Let's not get that on something. All right. This brush has seen better days, unfortunately. Switch to its sibling. It's not doing a whole lot better, but right now, while I'm waiting for this, I'm going to just see what the contours of this will be. So I'm just kind of working in a preliminary highlight. This part I'm not too sure about yet. Keep trying to move it around, and I think I'm just really torturing the paint at this point. So let's just get that on there and leave it to its own for a moment. Check on our first one. It's not bad. To be honest, we almost could have just dry brushed it on there and then just glazed over it. Probably gotten a similar or the same result. Maybe been a slightly less smooth, a little more grainy, but probably could have just cleaned that up afterwards. As a matter of fact, I think maybe, just maybe, we should dry brush a little just to show us where we should be focusing our efforts. And honestly, if you're not painting only just 4 guys' wings, I think that would work extremely well to actually just dry brush them and be done. But putting in extra time with these guys because there's only a handful of them. I want my Malifaux gang to really stand out, and so I want to put in a bit more effort, even if the return is not a tremendous one for at least this particular element. And for doing the skin and so on, definitely getting big payoffs from that. I really do like how the skin's turning out. These wings so far could probably have gotten away with just the Just a very light and careful dry brush. Let's pull the light down here. Alright, I think that's a good basic idea of where we want our light and shadow to be here. Now comes the fun part, blending it all in. Still seeing places here where I'm not happy with the coverage. Unfortunately, part of that I think is these brushes. They're not the brushes I would use in optimal circumstances. They don't retain paint extraordinarily well. And so when you get the paint on the model, you end up kind of torturing it. Trying to sort of force it where you want it to be. Yeah, exactly, science, yeah. Yep, exactly. I really look at it as opportunity, though. You know, when you're trying to paint a whole 40K army, yeah, you want to be able to spend a lot of time with each model, but you know you can't. You know, you'll never finish an army that way. Even a Custodes army, though, of course, you know, Custodes being an army that you can do largely metallic, you can take a lot of shortcuts with them as well and still have them look really good. So there is that advantage. But when you're painting big armies, especially like orcs, it's very tough to spend a lot of time on individual models. I think also you just get less scrutiny in 40K because there's so many people who just don't even paint their models. Which, I don't want to say they don't ever paint their models. Let's just say their armies never actually get painted. Because it's not like they aren't trying to paint their models. It's just, it takes a long time, takes a lot of effort. You have to be able to set aside time to get things done. And for armies as big as 40K demands, quite often, you'll just never really find that time. You'll never really be able to get it done. For a lot of people, not everyone, obviously. But I know some exceptional painters who've been working on their own army for years and will never get it done. They'll never get it done because their standard is so high. They want to have such a well-painted army, and they have the capacity to paint just an amazing-looking army. But they will never finish it because it will take them months to paint just a handful of models. And I know it sounds strange, but some of the best painters I know actually pay other people to paint the armies they're actually going to play games with. Because they just don't have the time to paint an army. And they know if they try to do it, they'll try to do it to this exacting standard that will just take them ages and they'll never finish. I think one example is Michael Fontaine, the Canadian painter, and that guy is amazing, truly world-class, but will not, as far as I know, at least last time I talked to him, which has been quite a few years now, he did not ever paint any of his own stuff. He always sent his own stuff to be commission painted, and then focused on painting, his, stuff that he, the commissions that he had to do for other people to make a living. And it was strange, because he actually would paint armies for people, an entire army for someone as a commission. Not something he did often, because it's very expensive to commission him. Understandably so. But so, hey Boxman, hey Crokeg, how are you guys doing? Have you guys, I think Crokeg's been in this painting stream before. I know he's been around bowls at least, being a sub and all. And, good. Boxman, I'm not sure I've seen you before. You, are you a common visitor to bowls, or is this, are you a new visitor? And Crokeg, yeah, I'm doing well, man. Doing great. Kind of tired today, but, I need to get myself into this painting stream here. Start banging out these Nephilim. They really need to get done. Or at least the blue guys, so I can get on to the ladies, because the ladies are very different. They're not blue-skinned. They have less demonic features. I'll give you an example. This will be the gang leader, Lilith. As you can see, she just looks like a human with a big sword and a kind of throwback haircut. But but she's going to have elements that tie her in with the rest of the gang. So, I mean, her big trench coat is probably going to be red. There's going to be some element of red in her clothing. I have not decided for certain if her coat is going to be dark and then her outfit, her clothes underneath are going to be red, or if the trench coat or whatever this thing is going to be red and then the outfit underneath will be sort of a darker color. But it's going to be some mix of that. But otherwise, she's going to have actually normal flesh tones. And so, you know, she's going to need something that ties her in with these other guys that will obviously not look human in any way. And then there's one that's going to be in flesh tones, but is also obviously not human, and that's Nekima. And as you can see, she's a big girl. She is Lilith's sister, actually, and I know it seems strange to think about it. When you think big sister, you don't usually think that much bigger, but yeah. She's big, and she's badass. And it's going to be a lot of fun to paint her. I'm definitely going to be spending a lot of focus on her, and the wings will probably be somewhat different. I'm not sure how I'm going to approach them yet, but I think she's going to be a lot of fun. We already tried one little experiment. That's why you see, like, you know, her front is black, even though I've sprayed white around here to sort of give me an idea where the highlights will be. And we tried something here. I mean, it actually didn't look bad. It didn't look bad, but I didn't like the direction it was going in terms of how it would fit with the overall look of the model. And so I decided to go ahead and just erase it. The usual way I erase a single thing off a model, I just take some alcohol and a Q-tip and just rub it away. You know, I think round 2 we'll probably have a better idea of what we want to do. And, you know, there's always the big question, which of these two am I going to do first? I may do Lilith first, simply because it'll be easier to test things on her, and then sort of carry those things over to Nekima when I get to working on her. But it's going to be a lot of fun. You know, we've got some little dudes left still in the blue category, but these guys will go pretty quickly, I think. As you can see, this guy's almost halfway done with his skin. These are a little harsh. I want to blend them in a little bit more so they look a little more natural. I'm just getting the highlights in there and see where I wanted them. But I think we're going to make it a little bit more subtle transitions there. And then, really, once you've done that guy, once you've done that part of this guy, you just do the hooves, and then you paint this tiny little loincloth and these, you know, little weapons here, and he's done. So, pretty simple, actually. And I've got 2 more little dudes just like that. 2 more little guys. Not getting in too big of a rush, though, because my bases still have not come in for the smaller guys. I have the bases for the bigger guys. Got these nice little spoopy pumpkin bases. So, I think they'll be pretty fun. Got a whole bunch to choose from, so the gang will have quite a bit of variety without any repeats, you know, or minimal repeats at least. Here, if you weren't here for when the stream started, this is the prototype for how they'll look. And I'm probably going to add some of this dead grass to it. If I don't like how this dead grass looks, then I'll probably go find a different color, just to make it just a little bit more interesting. And this one, however, is for this guy, so give you an idea where we're going with this. And I think I really like the pumpkins because they contrast extremely well with the blue skin. I think it really just brings the base and the model together very well. And I really am looking forward to finishing this guy and seeing how he looks completely done. And then, of course, this is actually the first one we were working on stream. Really all he lacks is a few little bit of highlights on his skin, but mostly we got to get his wings done. But that's why we're working on this guy today. He's got a little bit easier wings to work with because they're a little bit bigger, and it's easier to handle him than this guy. I know it doesn't really look like it, but it actually is. And so once I figure it out on Barbaros here, it'll be easy to transfer it to this other guy. Then this other guy, all we got to do, really the only difficult part will be painting this little head that is on the end here. Let me adjust the focus here so you can see it. There we go. You can see he's got this head clutched in his hands, and it comes down in this little spine into this pile of what I assume are supposed to be sinew or bones or something. And what we're going to do is we're going to get this all painted in bone down here, and paint the face the typical flesh way. It's going to be interesting because it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to try to get in there and get everything painted properly without accidentally painting the blue parts another color that's not blue. And then we're gonna try out Blood for the Blood God, because I haven't tried that stuff out yet, but I've seen some super cool applications of it, and I want to take that and use a bunch of it on there, because I think that would really really top things off for that model. And I'm also going to apply it to other stuff too. I'm going to be using it on the sword here on Barbaros. May even spatter a little blood here and there, maybe on this leaf here, put a few spatters of blood to make the leaf a little bit more interesting, especially with the contrast that you get with red on green. So yeah, I think it's going to be really cool. I can't wait to try it out. I've had good results with the Nurgle stuff. What do they call it? I want to say just Nurgle's Rot, but I feel like I'm just being lazy by saying that, not actually looking at the bottle to know for sure. Here we go. It is Nurgle's Rot. What a surprise! All right, focus. There we go. All right. So I'll give you an example here. What I've been doing with the Nurgle's Rot on my Death Guard. This guy's not completely finished. He's almost finished. He actually just has a few things left I need to do, and then he's completely done. But I haven't got back to him because I've just been busy with so many other projects. But as you can see here, I made this sort of little river of sludge, and all of his little, divots in his armor, the little craters and so on, and some of the Nurgle symbols. Some of them are just painted Death Guard green right now. Some of them do have the Nurgle's Rot on them, but once I varnish him, once he's finished, I'm going to have to go back over all of that with Nurgle's Rot anyway, so I'm holding off on the majority of it. I was just putting on some of it to see if I liked how it looked. So, it'll be a lot of fun when this guy is finished. I also do like how the base turned out. A little bit of gloss varnish on the soil parts gives you this nice gloss, so it looks very swampy. So I do like how that turns out. His buddy I don't think is quite so interesting because the tentacles, I think there's too much tentacle. So I may have to figure out some way to make the shading more pronounced on the tentacles, because there's just so many of them that that the shading that I'm using now doesn't really stand out a whole lot. I'll have to think about that though, because he is going to be in an army with a whole bunch of other models, so it may not be all that distracting when, other models have maybe one tentacle on them, every third guy. This will be the next guy when I get back to going full-time on my Death Guard on stream. This will be the next guy we get to. As you can see, I've only done a little bit of the chipping on him, but we're going to get back to the hairspray chipping. In fact, we may even get back to hairspray chipping a little bit earlier, because there's something we're getting soon that I think hairspray chipping will work great on, and we'll probably see that maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now, maybe a little bit longer. But once I get that in, it'll be pretty neat, and you can see some other applications of the hairspray chipping that I think will be pretty cool. And then of course there's Lord Felthius, who I haven't even put any of the permanent colors on yet, but he's going to be a lot of fun, especially because I haven't had a chance to paint like a rotten face in my Nurgle army yet, so it's going to be a lot of fun to get around to him. So all in all, lots of neat stuff that we have coming up in the stream. Some of which I don't know all the details about yet, but I know we're getting some stuff for bowls pretty soon that sounds really cool that I want to try out. So while we have this little bit of a break from the Malifaux stuff, we're going to come right back to it, but what I want to do is show you some of the other stuff that we worked on last stream, and I can show you some of the progress we've had on that. So here is the finished Martyr infantry fighting vehicle that we had been working on in some previous streams. I added the decals, and I added some pigments to give it that nice dusty dirty look. And I really like how it turned out. Of course the turret just comes right off. I painted a little red ring there, so when the vehicle gets destroyed in game, if I don't have any appropriate, like, you know, flame looking markers or anything like that, I can just take off the top and say, yep, you see that red ring means I'm dead. So, you know, yeah, apparently German armored vehicles are just like Xboxes. So all I have to do is paint 6 more exactly the same way. And I've already started. But yeah, I have six more of these bad boys to go. And luckily, I learned a lot from painting the first one, and this guy is sort of an experiment right now for for a sort of faster way to get the rest of them done. And that will help me also do the rest of the army, because I still have to paint 10 Leopard 1 tanks, 6 Gepard anti-aircraft guns, and other miscellaneous vehicles. And so there's still quite a bit to do with that army, and I don't know if I'm going to finish it all by the time this Escalation League that we're doing, you know, for the next month and a half, 2 months. But we'll see. Maybe I'll get it done. I mean, I definitely could get it done. The question is, will I actually have the willpower to sit and finish it? I hope so, because I think it would be a great looking army. At 80 points for Team Yankee, I think it would be a whole lot of fun. Unfortunately, part of that is also getting the models. I still need to get my Leopard 1s, and because it's kind of problematic. If you want to get one company called Plastic Soldier Company makes really good Leopard 1s in plastic, and they're about $50 to get 10 of them. From Battlefront, you can't actually get 10 of them. You have to get them. Now, Battlefront's the company that makes the models for Team Yankee specifically. So, if you want to do official events or post any of your work on their page, you have to use their models. And their Leopard 1s are resin and cost about, well, probably about $13 a piece, $12 to $13 a piece, depending on who you get it from. And so it can get pretty expensive, and I need 10 of them, so that's already pretty pricey. And then you add to the fact that they also only package them in boxes of 3, so I need to get 2 more than what I actually need. And it's, you know, it's sort of compulsory for me to get 2 more than I need. And so that's also another problem. Now, normally you can actually buy any tank they make individually also. If you didn't want to buy 3 tanks, you could just special order a single one from them. but they only do that for their plastic lines, not their resin stuff, unfortunately. Not as I'm aware. If they did, it would be much easier to solve that problem. So what I'll probably end up doing is just eating the cost of the extra 2 and then finding someone else who has a similar problem. That's a little too light there. Yeah, what I want to do after this West German army is I want to do either come on, I hate when you get little fuzzy there that doesn't want to come off. Luckily I have my anti-fuzzy brush handy. What I want to do next is either do a Soviet what they called VDV, Военно-воздушные силы, which is just their... No, sorry. Военно-воздушные силы is VVS. Sorry, that's thinking Air Force. VDV is военно-воздушные... No. God, why can't I think of it right now? Anyway. Военно-десантные войска, I think. But that's it's just air assault troops. And I'm going to do basically Afghan-themed air assaults, so from the 80s era, because that's when Team Yankee takes place. It's sort of, if the Cold War goes hot during the 80s, and I want to do basically veterans from the Afghan War, fighting in Europe. And so it's going to be a whole lot of like 12 Hind helicopters and a whole lot of infantry, probably not a whole lot of tanks, no whole lot of vehicles, probably mostly of the anti-aircraft or transport variety, maybe, especially if I can get a hold of the authentic authentic transports they used, because the air assault forces didn't actually use BMPs. They had their own vehicle, which was not drastically different in terms of capabilities. It was just smaller and lighter so that it could be used for airdrops. And I'm trying to remember what that is. I think it was the BMD. And I almost feel bad that I can't just rattle it off. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this thing. It's just torturing my paint right now and is not giving me nice smooth transitions. I'm just gonna have to kind of blob it for now and then just blend it back in. So just blobbing. I have to do a few blobs. Yeah, it's the travails of being a miniature painter. Is even if I was exceptionally good at this and I had tons of people watching this stream right now, I could probably still not talk Raphael, which is a watercolor brush making company, into sponsoring me by sending me more actually good brushes. And in any case, I need to buy more of their brushes. Sponsorship or no, and yeah, it's definitely a no, so I'm gonna have to go and order some. And I fully recommend, if you really want to get serious with your brushes, giving them a go. But yeah, the Raphael Kolinsky Sable brushes, they just have amazing water and paint retention, so you can really get paint to flow out of the brush properly, and you'd be amazed how much more control you have over your paints doing that. Like, you can put your paint on the model, it will stay nice and wet, and you can manipulate it, pull it around, make it go where you want it to. And can only kind of do that to a limited extent here, and I almost need to use an anti-drying agent, but I haven't been, not really accustomed to using that kind of stuff, so only mixing it in for say airbrushing stuff, and then I usually just use the thinner designed for use in airbrushes. Usually Vallejo stuff, which is good because Vallejo is usually one of the ones you'll have more trouble with when you're trying to dilute it for use with airbrushes, unless you get their air colors, of course. But if you're just trying to use one of their standard colors, definitely using a thinner helps to maintain the color and not end up with something grainy and weird. And you'd probably see me try to set up something where I could actually use my airbrush on stream, but I don't use it much right now because my airbrush is not terribly good. It's not very precise. It doesn't do very good fine work, and my compressor is very difficult to adjust for low pressure work. So I'm not going to really be seeing that much on stream at the moment, but maybe someday. Yeah, maybe by then I'll have the space to actually have a better setup as well. As where I'm at right now, it looks decent, but I'm actually pretty confined in terms of what I can do with the space I have. So a few years ago I had my own miniatures room and wasn't streaming painting, and you know, that sort of one of those ironies. But hopefully once I find out what med school I'm going to, if any, I will be able to start looking for an apartment in whatever area I'll be going to and find something where I can actually have a decent setup spread out. So that'll be nice. And then we could probably maybe do some more stuff with airbrush. Until then, though, there are definitely a lot of really good streamers already out there that you can already learn airbrushing techniques from. I mean, I would have to watch them to learn airbrushing techniques because I haven't really had much chance to do a lot of them. There's only a few that I'm actually decent with. So, if you want to learn how to use an airbrush for miniature painting, there are definitely streamers out there that can accommodate. And hopefully, maybe one day I will be one of them. Or sorry, it's not Michael Fontaine. Earlier I said his name. It's actually Matthew Fontaine, sorry. Matt Fontaine. He is also exceptionally good with airbrushing techniques, and I kind of wish he had a stream, if he doesn't already. I know he occasionally does videos. I don't know if he does streaming, because I would really love to see him doing airbrushing live. Yeah, BMD. I think it's Via Machina de Santa, I think. You know, fighting vehicle of the assault troops, air assault. When I start working on that army, I'm definitely going to have to get into the Russian literature on it and see, you know, if there's anything interesting I can add to it. Though there's already a pretty good amount of info on, like, you know, what their markings were, you know, the unit markings and so on, and how their uniforms differed, because they had this kind of almost turquoise color for some of their markings instead of the red that your typical Soviet Union units had. And I can't remember exactly why that was. There was actually a very specific reason for that, but it doesn't come to mind right at the moment. But as a sort of tradition of theirs to use that color instead. And so that's one thing that also makes them sort of stand out. And having, you know, a dozen Hind helicopters with them, it's going to be a pretty intimidating force. It's going to be a lot of fun. The not fun part will be trying to actually get the helicopters. That's actually the only barrier to me getting that army, because the infantry themselves are not very expensive, but the helicopters are $50 a pair. So unless Battlefront becomes super benevolent to Bowles in the near future, probably going to have to wait until I can gather the resources for my Soviet army. But it will come someday. Now the question is, will I do that, or will I do the U.S. Marines first? Because I'm also definitely stoked about the idea of doing a U.S. Marine Army. Because I myself was in the Marines for about 8 years. And the neat thing about the Marines in the 1980s is they were just starting to implement the NATO camouflage scheme that we still pretty much use on everything now. Trying to get purple Necron rods. So, oh wow. Okay, so for that, I would almost say, so you need to maintain transparency. So you need to be able to coat the rod in something that is the purple you want, but you want it to stay transparent. It's going to be tough because the green is always going to be a part of the material that it's going through. The first thing I would try to do is look and see if there's anyone who already makes a purple colored rod specifically for those models, because there are some, like, you know, secondhand there are like secondhand companies that make you know, make rods for Necrons that are different colors. If you have clear ones, that's definitely a lot easier. You can definitely color them much more easily than you could the green ones, and get purple. The green ones would add more difficulty to it, or possibly, you know, make the results not what you wanted them to be. Trying to think. You could probably use. I wouldn't not use a wash. I mean, like, maybe get a GW purple glaze. I don't know what their glaze is in the purple color, but I would give that a try. So why are you going for purple specifically? Are you doing yellow Necrons? Oh, okay. Hmm. Honestly, with the tan and bone and purple, I would just not even bother with silver. Unless you're going to do non-metallic metal. Because remember, anytime you add silver to a model, you're basically painting on just metallic white. Which means, in the case of doing like tan and bone, you won't really be taking anything away from the mini specifically, but you will kind of be adding a similar color next to, you know, that if you paint something silver and then you paint something tan bone right against it, they're not going to stand out much one against the other as different elements in the model. Now, I mean, it entirely depends on how you plan to apply it, so since I don't actually have insight into what your plan is, I don't know if it could actually totally work just fine. But I'm just putting it out there that silver doesn't always cooperate. I know this having painted lots of Necrons in the past, and now, you know, doing my Grey Knights. Silver definitely adds a lot of complications to doing things. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, honestly, though, like, I would almost recommend considering just doing the whole tan bone for the entire body. But I mean, honestly, don't take my word for it. Do what I would do and just do a model of each and see which one you like better. Alright, that's exactly what I would do. If I was torn between two different ways of doing it, I would just paint one model each and say, okay, I like this one. And then send the other one to get, you know, strip down the other one and do it the same way. Once you've decided how you want things to be done. I mean, I do that all the time when I'm making a new army. And it's really the best way to avoid, you know, regretting how you made your army. And I mean, I definitely did that with my Grey Knights a few months ago, and I liked how they were turning out and how they're going now. I haven't been able to get around to them because I've just been busy with the Death Guard and with Malifaux and some other games that I just anticipate more that I'll be playing sooner than I will be 40k. Not that I have any problems with 40k, I just don't really have time to invest in it on the nights where it's really popular. It's easier for me just to show up on the same night and the same place that they do Malifaux and Team Yankee, and whichever one's being played or whichever one's available, you know, as an opponent available for me, you know, I can just get started on that. So that's why I'm working on these two first, and then I can get back to the old basics, back to 40k. Yeah, the green rods can be limiting because if you really think about it, if you want a strong complementary color to the green rods, you basically have to have red Necrons. And you know, as they say, if you're stuck with green rods, you might be a red Necron. Dun dun dun. But yeah, I think some of the different rod colors, like what are some of the other rod colors you'd consider if you had to change your mind? Because I mean, a red Necron army is actually not not a bad thing at all, but some people don't think it really fits the theme of Necrons to be all red. I could understand that that feeling, you know. I mean, I think a entirely red Necron army would be kind of neat, but at the same time, it does kind of seem weird for the sort of aesthetic that they have. Red or yellow? Well, if you do red, if you do the red translucent bits, then you'd basically be doing green Necrons. You could do yellow rods and do purple Necrons. Sounds weird, but you actually could do it. And trying to think would be the best way to do that. I don't know. I don't know how I would do purple Necrons, honestly. It would take a long time for me to figure out how to do that where I liked it. That would maybe be one of the cases where you'd actually go heavy with the silver look and then have a lot of purple trim. You might actually be able to get away with silver with that more easily. Well, the Martian Iron Crust would definitely give you a contrast with their weapons, but not every Necron model, especially the new ones, has the translucent, the translucent, bars or rods in their weapons. And also, they're not really quite that ubiquitous. They don't really stand out quite as much on some of the newer models as they used to on the old ones. So, I mean, honestly, if I was doing a new Necron army now, I would try to find a way to, like, avoid using the translucent rods altogether. I would just, like, paint their weapons to look like ordinary weapons, and I would just, like, have, like, I would like to have, like, some plastic insert, you know, that you could just put in there instead that had, you know, some texturing or, you know, modeling on it that just makes it sort of look like a more ordinary weapon. That way I would just have more freedom to just sort of paint them however I wanted, and I wouldn't have to worry about trying to match it to, you know, these translucent rods that I don't have a lot of control over. And that's That's from my experience having painted a Necron army back in 3rd edition when they first came out with the big plastic kits for Necrons. Yeah, I think I would have liked it better if I had had more control over it. Yeah, yeah. And if there's, I don't know if there's like a kit or anything that GW or a third party makes that gets rid of the translucent rods for like warriors and the old destroyers and so on. But that would be the kind of thing I would look into if I was going to try to do another Necron army, would be just to try to get rid of the translucent rods altogether. I think they're just a complication to the aesthetic for the Necrons now, since they're no longer universal. And even when they were universal, they were kind of stifling, limiting. They kind of pigeonholed you into a certain set of color schemes you could do that would work with the green. So and see, we have a lot of new people now, so we're gonna just briefly talk about what we're working on here. We're working on Barbaros from Malifaux. He's from the Lilith's base gang kit, Mother of Monsters. Can't remember if that's the name of the kit itself or not, but yeah. So he's sort of a mid-range character, and we're working on how we're going to do his wings right now. The rest of his flesh is going to be painted sort of like his face, slightly less extreme highlights. But we're going to try to get to his horns, his hair, his little leather straps on him, and his hooves before we worry about the rest of the body, because we already kind of know how that's going to be. In fact, if you want to see for comparison, this is the skin of one of his brethren, and so it's essentially going to be the same process for him. Not any different. And this is the base he'll be put on, so. So, getting back to him. Yeah, you could totally just paint the rods. Yeah, that's entirely something you can do. The only thing I don't like about that, the reason I would prefer to have a rod that's textured, is it's just more interesting. Otherwise you're just, sort of painting a rod with nothing on it. Alternatively, maybe there's a way to get textured rod. Even if it just had like, a diamond pattern on it, just going around its circumference and along its length. As long as it was the right gauge, that would still be pretty interesting. It would add something to it, besides just this bald rod that you'd have to paint. Ooh, let's not do that. All right. Start trying to pick out some of the details here so that we can start blending them in to the rest of the wing. And this part right here, this little spine along that edge, it's actually going to be painted differently. So I'm not worried at all about dragging my highlight onto it for now. I think that's working well. Yeah, no, that would totally work. You just need to have enough of them. I'm not too familiar with what they changed in the Immortals kit, though. So, well, actually, no. The Immortals were the ones that they completely redid. It's the Destroyers that still have the same basic plastic kit with, I think, some minor changes. Because I don't think they do the heavy Gauss rifle with in metal anymore. That would be not in keeping with their new way of doing things. Yeah. Well, technically they aren't fluorescent. They're just transparent. Which I mentioned not to be pedantic, but actually because that gives me an idea. What if you actually did replace them with actual fluorescent tubes? Or painted them with fluorescent paint? My brush is being... There we go. It's not good when your brushes lose hair faster than you do. Especially when you lose hair as fast as I do. Alright. Let's see if we can get this sucker blended in. First add a little bit. Of our pure dark color. Blend some at the top just to make some of these stand out a bit more. Some cases get rid of some of the rough edges. Spicy tips. Alright. First of all, Slave Night Gale. I love that name. You'll probably recognize the music, well, that I was just listening to, but it's just switched. So, so the first thing is, what kind of models are you going to be starting out painting? Like Space Marines, fantasy stuff, some Malifaux stuff like this, you know, what kind of stuff you're going to be working on. Yeah, I love the name. I hate fighting Slave Night Gale, but I love the name. I still like fighting him better than Dark Eater Midir, though. At least Slave Night Gale is not just this health sponge that takes an hour to kill. Okay, starting to come together here. Age of Sigmar skeletons. Okay, so skeletons, it depends. Like how in depth do you want to go with painting them? Do you want to get them on the tabletop looking decent, or do you want to really go all out and really take a lot of time and practice really hard to do really smooth blending transitions and so on? Because I mean, there's no wrong answer with that. It's, you know, it's entirely up to you how much time you want to spend on your models and how much time you have to spend on them and how much time you have to practice on more advanced techniques, or, you know, using, you know, easier techniques that give decent results is totally fine, especially when you just want to get your models on the tabletop looking decent and being able to play the game with them. So it's all about how you want to do it. But there are definitely very easy techniques to do that give you decent looking skeletons you can get out on the battlefield. So if that's what you want to try out, then let me know. I'll tell you how to do either one, honestly. And here we're just going to do a light glaze of our Incubi Darkness, just to tie everything together. Okay, so the more detailed method. So actually, to help you learn how to do the more detailed method, we'll start with the less detailed method. So the first thing you would do is you would paint the model the bone color you want. Then you would wash it with probably Seraphim Sepia would be the best choice. And if you didn't like that, if you thought it was still a little too light, you could use Agrax Earthshade. But for bone, you probably want to wash with Seraphim Sepia. And don't go crazy with it, just, you know, give it a nice, you know, even wash of it. Then you want to go back with your bone. It's probably going to be Ushabti bone. Yeah, this right here. And there's some other similar bone colors too. I think there's a slightly darker bone base color you can also use, and that works totally fine. And it's a little convenient because I think they actually have that color in a spray can. So you can do that, and then dry brush the original base color over it, and then take a slightly lighter bone color, like or even like Screaming Skull is really great, and just dry brush that over, just very lightly over that dry brush. In fact, sometimes you just want to take your dry brush And instead of, like, you know, when you're doing your when you're just doing the original color over your wash after your wash is dry, you're just going to kind of go back and forth, up and down and around. You know, you're just trying to get that base color back in there and maintain your shading in the recesses and everywhere else, but try to get all of the raised areas, you know, closer back to the original base color. And now you have some shading, and then you go and you take this Screaming Skull and you take a little bit of it, and then you dry your brush pretty well, a little bit better than you would for your first go, and then instead of going back and forth and around, you're actually coming down, bam, just like this. And so then you're hitting the areas that are, you know, most exposed to the light, so your highlights are looking more natural when you're just coming down like this. And, you know, start out with less paint on your brush, and then, you know, if you decide that's not enough, then work your way up to increasing the amount of paint you leave on your brush before you start dry brushing it. And that will give you really good results with skeletons. If you really want to get crazy with it and spend a lot of time, and it's going to spend a lot of time because undead armies have lots of skeletons. I'm not even sure I would try it. I'd probably just dry brush mine. But you can do it very similar to how I do blending for this guy. Here, let me do an example. So there are a couple of ways you can blend paints together. Sometimes two colors you try to blend over each other don't really cooperate, and you just have to kind of mix them and progressively work your way up, and that's totally fine as well. That's kind of what I have to do with this guy. So, and probably not because of the paints, honestly. It's mostly because of the kind of brushes I have right now. I need more of the other color. This is a good time to show you because I have to wait for these wings to dry, and they're pretty much done anyway. At least the top is. The bottom's basically going to be the same method, but not as stringently detailed, because we have, I mean, most of it's going to be shaded anyway because of the fact that it's just all pointing downward. You know, it's just going to be enough to just enough to give it a little bit of depth. Alright, so we've already kind of started here, but we're gonna go over some of the basics of painting, you know, smooth limbs and so on, which, you know, you'd think this is skin, it's really not anything like bones, but really, when you're painting a miniature, a bone is really just a really skinny limb. I mean, the way you're going to approach painting it is no different, just the colors are different. So keep that in mind. I mean, like, same thing as painting the flesh of this blue guy. Same thing as painting skin on anything else. It's just the different colors you're using, but the techniques are the same. Now keep in mind you can also mix this, because if you want your, you know, your more centerpiece guys, your Graveguard or any of your commanders, necromancers, so on, you can always go a lot more detailed with your characters and then go somewhat less detailed with your troops. In the case of skeletons, it's probably a good idea because you get a buttload of skeletons, but you only have a handful of characters you have to worry about. So here I'm not being too careful about blending in this highlight color. I just took my dark, you know, flesh tone, the darkest flesh tone I'm going to use for these guys, and now I'm just adding a mix of that along with Fenrisian Gray, which in this case will be the lightest color I will use. My brush does not cooperate with me very well, so I get a lot of of the color ends up not where I want it, so I have to do a lot of sort of counter blending. I still want it to be lighter there though, so it's definitely a process. And it's not one that I've even mastered after, a little over 20 years of painting minis. But sometimes I've been more diligent about it than other times, so it hasn't been constantly painting minis all the time in those 20 years. But let's just go ahead and let that dry in that entire color there. Icy effect on weapons and armor actually is very similar to what I'm showing you now. Let's do this leg here because this actually shows a very good deal of where we'll have the light hitting our model. So let's just go ahead and go with the extreme right now so you can see. So you see the contours on this leg. Right now they look kind of ill-defined because they're all one color. But now let's add in an extreme highlight. Just taking one color, our pure extreme highlight color, the Fenrisian gray, and we're just painting it on the top of these contours. It's very hard to see, sorry, because this wing likes to constantly get in the way. Remember, when you're painting, one of the things you'll have to learn early when you're doing brushwork is that you're not really, rubbing or wiping paint over your model. You're actually getting the paint on there, and then you want to push it around to where you want it. Unfortunately, it doesn't work too well right now with this brush because it doesn't retain moisture very well, and so my paint is kind of drying faster than I'd like it to. But in this case, let's just go ahead and apply it. Let's just go extreme right now. So let's say that this model right here was a block of ice, which is appropriate because these are blue colors. These are even colors you could possibly use for ice, though I probably wouldn't use these. They're not bad, but there's some better ones for it. You want to identify where your highest raised areas are. And you want to get your highlights on those. And you can start out rough, just like this. Nothing wrong at all with starting out rough, and then, just to get the bearings of where all your different colors are going to be, where your highlights are going to be, and just really get a sort of like, from 2 feet away look at what your highlights will eventually look like, from a distance. So they don't look right from a distance, and you probably need to fix it before you make them permanent. But let me increase a bit of the coverage on these highlights here. And I'm not going to really worry about this part yet, but I'm just going to get it in there just to give an idea. Top of the leg is going to be complicated, but we're just going to Alright, so that's our basic idea. And then, of course, you want to go back and make sure the dark areas are nice and dark as well. But now here comes the tricky part, is meshing things together. Now for like right here, I can leave that almost exactly how it is. Like, I don't need to blend the two. I don't need to really blend my highlight and my shade colors. All I really need to do is just blend my highlight. Not really blend my highlight, but make my highlight move sort of towards the inside and less in the outside. If that makes sense. And you can start by just mixing a little bit of the dark color into your light color. And then come up to these more broad areas. The sword unfortunately kind of blocks the light, and you just kind of and you have to sort of think about how the light is going to hit a particular area when you decide how much you want to highlight it. So this is really just the beginning on this one. I'm going to have to do a lot of work on this leg before I'm happy with it. So let me show you, and then I'll tell you about some colors you could use. This one is finished, and you can see let me change the camera zoom so I can bring it in a little bit closer. See here. And for painting ice, it's really no different. The only difference is that you have sharp edges instead of contours, and sharp edges are actually easier. And in fact, something to note with sharp edges that will make things look a little bit more realistic. I wish I had something that had sharp edge on hand so I could show you. But let's say you've got two edges that meet here. You want to highlight this edge going this way, and then when it meets this edge, you want to start dark over here going down. That way it looks like more like a reflective surface. So anytime you have two surfaces that are shaded that are going to meet, and those surfaces are, you know, metal or ice or something else that'd be kind of reflective, you want them to meet on the highlight of one and the shade of another, if that makes any sense to you. If you look up non-metallic metal and techniques for non-metallic metal, it goes over that pretty extensively, because it's kind of one of the core principles for painting non-metallic metal. So, as far as colors, actually, do you have the Citadel painting app? In fact, I can even look at it myself here. Citadel Paint, I believe it's free. You can go to Paint by Miniature. They probably got something that has an ice weapon. See if I can see my phone on here. Yeah, of course my lights. Alright, let's turn off the light. There we go. That's much better. Okay. And you know, this is not a bad resource, even for people who know what they're doing. It's actually be pretty useful. I don't see anything that's specifically ice, though, on here, unfortunately. I was hoping it'd have, like, a Yeti, because Yetis have ice weapons. But let's see what they, let's see what color they use for. No, they use the, yeah. So that could be, but they don't really have their old ice blue colors anymore. They've given them proprietary names now, so it's a little bit harder to identify them. But at the same time, probably what I would do is I would take the blue. Yeah, they do. They're just not in the app, unfortunately. What I would probably do is gather up some of your blue colors that you think would make good ice colors and just experiment with them. You know, do a few samples and see which one you like the best. I mean, that's exactly what I would do if I was going to try to do ice weapons. I would just do a few and then compare them to each other. And that's really the best way you're going to figure out which one will give you the results you want. So we spent a lot of time doing these wings. Those of you who've been here for this whole stream, you noticed pretty much just got the tops of these wings done. We didn't do a whole lot else on the stream so far. So let's switch gears for a little bit. Not to say that his wings, that we didn't make progress. I mean, certainly did. I like how they're coming out. You know what, actually, let's really finish these, because we didn't actually finish these little spines. And this is what's going to really tell us what these wings are going to look like, is how well they fit with these spines. And besides, I don't really have anything. I mean, I could switch to something else, but it'd be kind of random and just, I haven't really planned out any other stuff to paint, though I can totally pull out something else. Probably just be watching me paint camouflage. But let's actually get these, you know, ribs and spines, whatever you call them, the other parts of these wings, let's get them done, because we've got about 20 minutes left in the stream, and I'd like to see how that turns out. Not bad, not bad. Unfortunately, my palette paper is starting to dry out from being open for so long, so I'm going to have to migrate my paints that I'm using. There we go. Trying to get just an extreme edge there. Alright, Slave Knight Gale, you take care, buddy. And yeah, you know, get to experimenting, try out some stuff, see how you like it. If you got new questions that come up, definitely visit next week and tell me, you know, tell me what's on your mind and what you'd like to try out. And I'd be happy to help you. So, you know, hey, good luck and take care. I'm just going to use some of this while I have it on my brush over here. All right. Yeah, Croakegg. Definitely try some things out and see what you like. And let me know, man. Let me know how that works out. I'm kind of curious to see what the results will be. Because it's definitely something you want to plan out and see how you want it to look in the end. But I think it's definitely worth the time to plan it out, and I think it'll give you some good results, honestly. So I see things are starting to wind down a bit. Appropriate since we're coming close to the end of stream, but wanted to find out from you guys, the remaining audience, in the 10 to 15 minutes we got left, what kind of things do you see on the stream regularly that you actually like to see? Are there things you like to see more of? Because I certainly like to have variety. This today was kind of an exception to that. Didn't have as much different stuff as usual, but I definitely like to keep things fresh and have some different stuff to show you guys. And yeah, I definitely want to hear your opinions on the kinds of stuff you'd like to see. There may be things that I don't have or have access to, but I just might. You never know. So if there is something you want to see, or at least something similar that I can work on, so you get some ideas, you know, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, if you're just happy with whatever I happen to have in my hand at the time, then I'm happy with that too. Because as you will find out in this stream, I almost work entirely on stuff that I will be using for my own use, for my own games. Though there will be some exceptions from time to time. You know, there's going to be something that we want to showcase, and I'll be painting it here on stream, and hopefully, you know, because it won't be for me, it'll actually be for Bowls. We can actually see those played in the game. Well, hey, do it, Paragon. You know, if you want to know how to do reds like this, you know, it's actually this red is pretty easy combo. It's a very standard GW combo for doing red. It's actually their way to do Blood Angels, and yeah, works really well. I love it. All right, we got one wing highlighted up. All you gotta do is paint the little spikes in the end, little claws, or I don't know what you would call them, talons. Of course, we still gotta do the underside of the wing and the skin for that before I get around to those. And then we got the opposite wing. Let's go ahead and see what we can do with that. Well, thanks, Science. Yeah, I try to mix it up a lot of things. Like, I think something that people often don't realize is that there really isn't any painting technique that is exclusive to, you know, one kind of model or one genre. Like, I could take the way that I paint my West Germans and apply it to, like, painting an Imperial Guard army, and, you know, just like that, and get really good results with it. Not even a problem. And I think seeing different models that you're not used to being painted actually helps you learn how to even paint things that you're working on that are not really similar at all. Well, if you have a lot of Vespids, I probably recommend the dry brushing method instead of this way. Unless you really want it to take forever. I know I wouldn't want to do this a dozen times. I am really glad that I only have 4 models that I have to do this with. Oh yeah, definitely Paragon. That's one of the things you notice, especially with like your first few armies in 40K, is that you start out, you know, and you're just getting the feel for things, and then halfway through your army you realize the old half doesn't look nearly as good as, well, or at least the old quarter or third doesn't look nearly as good as the stuff you're putting out now. And then you feel like you have to go back and redo them in some way, and that is a thing that can happen. That even happened in my West Germans, and my West Germans are all pretty new, but I had only painted a few vehicles, and then I realized that I didn't really like how the first ones turned out, and so I went back and started changing them, and I found a new way that I liked a whole lot better. But I have not fully implemented it yet. Still going to take some time before that happens. But I can actually show you exactly what I mean, because I have the old and new one. So, this one, I painted on the camouflage scheme. I then dry brushed the highlights. But I did it rather, you know, strongly, so that I could go back and oh yeah, and those parts are definitely much easier too, because it's easier than redoing the entire armor. I dry brushed on the highlights, and I made them a little extreme, so that way when I then gloss coated it and then put on the wash, they would tone down a little bit. But I think they didn't tone down quite enough, and the wash came out okay, but because of the gloss varnish, I think it just added more sheen than I actually wanted. And as you can see, I've actually already started repainting it in some places just to see, you know, if I liked it better a different way. And I just thought maybe the dry brush highlights were a little too much. They just kind of made it look a little less natural. And so I went back and tried something totally different. And the dry brush highlights are actually still there if you can't see them. They are there, but I've been very careful to make them very subtle and not, you know, not distracting whatsoever. That's the biggest thing, is I wanted them to not be distracting. And I really like how it turned out. Yeah, I'm much happier with this, and this is, I think, how I'm going to go from here on out with doing all the rest of the army. And including redoing that other model. So yeah, going back and changing things, never be afraid to do that, unless your whole army's done. If your whole army's already done, you probably just want to say, okay, you know, I need to not obsess over this army anymore, and just move on to another project, because almost all of us have another project. Yeah, I meet very few miniature gamers who are like, okay, I have my one army, I got all the models I want for it, I'm totally done now for the rest of gaming eternity, just finished. I totally don't have another army just sitting in a box somewhere waiting to be assembled, primed, and painted. It's totally not there at all. And that person who says that is probably also a liar. So, I, for one, have plenty of projects to work on in miniature gaming. I have no end of of backlogged projects. This Malifaux gang actually being one of them. I actually had the basic kit, just the gang box, when it came out, which was early in 2nd edition. So it's been a year, at least, well, probably a few years now. Actually, more than a few years now I think about it. Geez, that was... I remember talking with Mac Martin about Dust Tactics. Years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago. And since then, he went to Weird for a while, helped them make 2nd edition, and then he moved on. So 2nd edition's been out for a while now. Well, I got that back then, but I didn't have enough of the new models to field a full gang with the new models. I still had old stuff. I could have done it, I guess, but, Malifaux kind of died in Austin for a while, and then it, slowly got a revival. I started getting interested in it again, and I looked at, what do I need to actually finish my gang? I don't have a whole lot of the plastic models, just have the base gang. So I got the rest of it very recently, and a lot of it for Christmas, actually. And now I have everything I need to field what I think will be a decent gang. And once I get them painted up, it'll be fun to put them out on the field once more. Get my sea legs back into Malifaux, because it has been quite a long time, but I am definitely looking forward to it. Oh, Stormcast Army, that's going to be fun. Tau, Death Guard, Ultramarines. Oh, yes. Yep. Pan-Oceania. Oceania? I can't remember what the long form is. And, oh yeah, terrain. I have decided to let others deal with terrain for now, but I'll probably come back to it at some point. This is one of the nice parts about Team Yankee, I guess, is that, if you buy the terrain from Battlefront, it's already painted, so there is that. It's not cheap, though, unfortunately. There are cheap alternatives, though, so, if I get cracking on those at some point, would be kind of neat. But fortunately, our group has a lot of players that bring a lot of their own terrain that is actually really good. So I usually don't have to worry about that for now. It's something I can wait till later when I have the time and resources to invest in it. But yeah, Stormcast Eternals look pretty cool, and if I was in the market for a new Age of Sigmar army, I would almost consider them because of, one, they're just ubiquitous availability. It's probably not all that expensive to get a decent army of them together. And two, they just kind of look cool, and you could do some neat things with them. They have a lot of versatility. You don't have to just paint them metallic colors. You can do a whole lot of different things if you wanted with them. And you'd have a really cool looking army. Just frankly, they are an army that has a very neat, unified aesthetic. They go together very well. They don't have any stuff that just kind of looks out of place in their army. And yeah, I kind of wish my wife was into tabletop gaming, because I could probably convince her to play Stormcast if that was the case. But probably not. She's not big on competitive games, so know, some people like games with a much more cooperative aspect to them. Like Lord of the Rings, the card game. Can definitely get her into that. She likes that. Dark Souls, the board game. Yep, games with a strong co-op factor like that. Even Silver Tower, so yeah, there's some Warhammer in there. In fact, she was even using, what's the Stormcast Eternal in Silver Tower that comes with the Gryph-hound? That was actually her character for Silver Tower. So in a way, she was playing a Stormcast Eternal, but getting her to take the plunge into Age of Sigmar is something else entirely. Yeah, and yeah, that's why it's a competitive thing that did not appeal to her about X-Wing. You know, she likes the models and stuff, but she doesn't like the idea of playing against me all the time. Even though I bring just basically vanilla TIE fighters, so she can run roughshod over me with the far superior X-Wings. But that's mostly what I have for that game right now, is mostly the old stuff. Probably some of the newest things I have is like the TIE Phantom, which is pretty old now. But I liked X-Wing, but unfortunately I haven't had really any time to invest into it. The game has such an ever-changing meta, and of course there's more than just a time investment, there's a money investment as well, even though you don't have to paint them or anything like that. You know, they're always coming out with new things you have to keep up with to be competitive. So I just haven't had time. But maybe someday I'll get back into it. Alright, well, there's the tops of the wings. You know, other than, of course, the talons poking out of them. You know, those will come later. Probably figure out how I want to do the horns in the sky first. Well, so that's it today, guys. We're already going over a little bit, so, you know, we worked more on Barbaros. Hopefully next stream, if I haven't finished him already before then, we'll get him banged out the rest of the way, or really close, and we can move on to other fun stuff. Possibly more of the Malifaux gang, possibly some different things. Maybe some of the West Germans, and then back to the Death Guard eventually. Back to the Death Guard, and then of course, guys we have not seen in a very long time, but I want to remind people who have been here since the beginning, we still have Grey Knights. Remember, the Grey Knights are still a thing, and eventually we will get back to them, and we will have painted Grey Knights. You know, his base is not done. I'm going to add some more stuff to that, but you know, otherwise he is done. And this is the exemplar for the rest of the army. We will get back to it at some point. Because Grey Knights, not the strongest army in the meta right now. Hopefully they'll get some love soon, make them a little bit more viable. But they're a fun army. They're definitely fun. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. I hope you check out next week. No news on changing the schedule yet, but keep in mind that a schedule change is pretty much on the horizon at some point soon. But just keep an eye out for it. I'll make sure to try to get you guys informed when that happens. Thank you, Science. Thanks, Paragon. Thanks, everybody else who was here today, both in the chat and just kind of lurking around. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you'll be around for next week to join us again. All right, you guys take care. Bye-bye.